Hi, I'm Ed Karn of Sound Wellness. This video is on activating or starting your tuning forks. Now, the first thing you need to be aware of when you're working with tuning forks is that there are two kinds of forks. There's a weighted fork or an unweighted fork, and you play them just a little bit differently. Now, the weights in the fork are generally only found on the tuning forks that sound around 256 hertz or lower. You generally don't find them on the higher frequency forks. And the reason that they're there is when you get down into the lower frequencies of tuning forks, the sound tends to dissipate fairly quickly. When you put the weights on the forks like this, it allows the fork to sound a little bit longer. It also gives you a little deeper vibration so that when you're using them to work on the body, then the vibrations of the fork are felt deeper. There are three parts of the fork that I want you to be aware of because these are really important for playing it. The first is the tines or the prongs. This is a part of the fork that actually vibrates. This is what creates the sound. There's a stem or the handle where you hold on to. And tying the two pieces together is this flat piece of stock called a yoke. Now, when you're playing a fork, try and hold on to the stem where you can. Now, my fingers are a little bit too long for that, and so I also tend to hold on to the yoke a little bit. And that's fine as long as you don't allow your fingers to get up and actually contact the tines. If your finger were to slide up and touch the tines while it's sounding, that sound is going to stop very quickly for you. When you're playing a fork and starting your fork, there's a few things that you really need to be aware of. Don't ever tap them on a really hard surface. Okay? Don't tap them on a desk or a table because doing so it can damage the forks, but it also brings out the much higher frequencies. Okay? Some people like to tap on a hockey puck. But again, a hockey puck is made out of very hard rubber, and tapping on a hockey puck will also bring out the higher sounds. And something you need to be aware of when you're tapping on something too hard is the way these forks are made. If you tap on something too hard, you will deflect the tines just a little bit each time, and over time, that deflection can get to be enough that the forks will sound at a different frequency than what they're designed for. Okay. Don't tap the forks together. Now, this is a set that we've got as a demo set from a supplier that I really didn't like the quality, and so I'm willing to use them for this. But if you tap them together, it brings out higher frequencies. It brings out those upper harmonics. And it also damages the fork. Every time I do this, I see a little chip in the fork that I make here. So there is a use for tapping the forks together, and we do talk about that in some of our higher level programs, but I don't want you doing it until you're really aware of what it is you're doing. Now, when you tap a fork, hold the fork firmly and give it a good firm tap. Tap it on the edge. Don't tap it on the side like this. You always want to tap it on the edge like this and give it a good firm tap like this to allow it to sound. Now, when you're tapping, this sound should last about 45 seconds. And as you get used to working with the forks, you'll get to know when you've got a good solid tap or not, just by the feel of the vibration of the fork in your hands. So for an unweighted fork, again, just give it a good solid tap, and that sound should last for about 45 seconds. Using a weighted fork, though, is just a little bit different. This is a 128 hertz auto fork. And when you're playing this fork, you can use the activator like this, or you can just use the heel of your hand to tap it. One thing, though, to be aware of when you're working with weighted forks is that it's very easy to tap them too hard to where the weights actually touch each other and clank together, like this. You can hear that clank where they come together. Try not to tap them that hard. Doing it occasionally isn't going to hurt, but over time, you can potentially damage the forks. So just give them a good firm tap to where they sound well, or use the heel of your hand and just give them a good solid tap on that. And again, as you get used to using the forks, you'll get used to how hard you need to tap them in order to get them to sound for a good 30 to 45 seconds. Now, when you're working with the other auto forks, this is a 64 hertz fork, this is a 32 hertz fork. You need to be really careful because with the longer tines, it's much, much easier to tap these to have the weights clang together. And again, you really don't want that. Over time, it can damage them. So I tend to tap these about halfway down the length of the fork, and I'll just give them a good solid tap against the heel of my hand until they give a good vibration. And again, get used to the feel of these, and you'll know exactly how hard to hit them to get them to last that 30 to 45 seconds. The 32 hertz, you really have to be careful when you tap it. It's really easy. Even tapping midway on this, you'll see that it's very, very easy to get the weights to clang together. And so just give it a good tap, lower down on the fork on the tines, just to give that nice vibration. Okay, try not to over tap these things. The last thing I want to mention about working with the tuning forks is to always take care of them. Now, all of the tuning forks that we sell, and most of them that I see on the market, do have a pouch. And so I want you to keep them in that pouch at all times when you're not actually using them. This will protect them if you end up putting them in a drawer or even on the shelf. It prevents them from clanging into anything else. It'll prevent damage to the tines, and it'll keep your forks sounding really well for the life of their forks. Well, that's my intro to how to start and activate the tuning forks. I wish you health and harmony.